Hello students, welcome to the online lecture series of St. Andrews Institute of Technology and Management, Gurugram. Myself Sutendra Vats, Assistant Professor in ETC Department. In today's presentation, we will see about the flash memories, magnetic and optical disk storage devices, and input-output devices and their controllers. That is input-output controllers, which is a part of Unit 3rd in LOC 2 BCA 2nd SAM. So first is flash memory, which is a non-volatile memory. It is a specific type of double EEPROM, that is electrically erasable programmable read-only memory that can be erased and at the same time can be programmed again. So there is a basic difference between EEPROM, that is double EEPROM, and flash memory is that in the double EEPROM we used to have erased the data or programmed the data at byte level. That is, we can only erase a byte or we can program a byte one at a time. So the erased operation or the programming operation were at byte level, whereas in this flash memory the data can be written and can be erased at block level. So we can erase a large amount of data at the same time and we can program it as well. So since the flash memory can be written in block size rather than byte, it is easier to update it. It is not useful as a RAM because RAM needs to be addressable at byte and not at the block level. This type of memory has been named as flash memory because large block of memory could be erased at one time or in a single action, which is called flash. So that is why it is called flash memory, because we can erase a block of memory in a particular interval of time. So let's see flash memory cells. Flash memory cell consists of one transistor with a floating gate that is similar to a electrical erasable programmable read-only memory cell. However, the gate oxide, that is the gate oxide, which is used as an insulator between the gate and the silicon layer, is thinner for flash memory as we compared it to the EEPROM. Okay, so the flash memory chip size is thus considerably less than the EEPROM. Since the oxide thickness is less or thinner in this case, the size of the memory chip is also less, so the density can be increased, due to which flash memory's density is higher and cost per bit is lower than EEPROM. So flash memory architecture then. So in your course all these memories, that is flash memory, magnetic disk, magnetic tapes, we need to have a overview of that. We don't need to go into the technicalities of that, or the we need not to get deeper into that. We just need to understand what is a flash memory and what is the procedure for the programming and to erase the memory. We don't need to go deeper into it. Okay, in your course we are only bothered about the overview of that. So flash memory architecture, there are two common flash memory architectures possible, that is NOR architecture and NAND architecture. So in NOR architecture, two MOS devices, PMOS or NMOS, are connected in parallel, whereas in NAND they are connected in series. So NOR architecture is the most popular flash memory architecture. In NOR architecture we connect our transistors in parallel. As you can see, they are connected in parallel, whereas in NAND, if it is a NAND configuration, in this the two transistors are connected in series. So this is the series connection, this is voltage and this is ground. Okay, so NOR architecture is the most popular flash memory architecture. It is commonly used in EEPROM and EEPROM design also. Although the NAND structure is considerably more compact, that is, it takes less space on the chip. It its main drawback is that when a cell is read, the sense amplifier sees a weaker signal than a NOR configuration, since several transistors are in series in NAND structure. So NAND structure may take less space, but the read operation is not up to the mark. Okay, so the NOR structure is the most popular flash memory structure architecture used, in which the transistors are connected in parallel. Okay, then we have magnetic disks. So magnetic disk is a storage devices that is used to write, rewrite and access data. We can write it, we can erase it, then we can rewrite and access the data it has stored. So it used a magnetization process. The entire disk is divided into platters. So disk is divided into platters. Each platter consists, if it is a platter, each platter consists of concentric circles called as tracks. So which the track I have shown you in figure, there are several tracks on every platter which are concentric to each other. These tracks are divided into sectors, okay, which are smallest division in the disk. So this is the smallest memory division in a disk, that is the sector. So there are multiple platters, then platters are divided into tracks, then tracks are divided into sectors. So a cylinder is formed by combining the tracks at a given radius. If I take a radius at unit r in all the platters, that is, we are taking the tracks at radius r, then it will form a cylinder, as you can see in this picture. So a cylinder is formed by combining the tracks at a given radius of a disk pack. There exists a mechanical arm called as read write head. So this is my read write, which will read the data, and we can also write the data on the magnetic disk platters using this read write head. It is used to read from and write to the disk. Each surface has its own read write head. So every surface will be having its read write head. Okay, head has to reach at a particular track and then wait for the rotation of the platters. The rotation causes the required sector of the track to come under the head. Each platter has two surfaces, as you can see. Every platter has two surfaces, this is one above and one below, in which we can store our data. So the rotation causes the required sector of the track to come under the head. Each platter has two surfaces, top and bottom, and both the surfaces can be used to store data. So all the tracks of a disk have the same storage capacity. So as you can see in this picture, there are several tracks. So all these tracks have the same capacity to store data, that is, same data can be stored, same amount of data can be stored in each track, but the density will be larger for the initial or the track which is closer to the center. As the radius is less, its area will be less, but the same amount of its data is stored in this track which is closer to center. So the density would be high, that is, the more data is stored per unit area. Okay, so storage density decreases as we move from one track to another away from the center. So storage density is high near the center, and as we move away from the center, the storage density decreases, but the data in all tracks is same, storage capacity is same. So innermost track has the maximum storage capacity, and the outermost track has minimum density. Okay, so then we have magnetic tapes. A magnetic tape drive is a storage device that makes use of magnetic tapes. You may have seen that we used to have the audio tape recorders and video tape recorders as well, VCD tapes. So in those cassettes, video cassettes and audio cassette, we used to have these magnetic tapes which stores information on these tapes. So it uses a long strip of narrow plastic film, which you all have might seen, the long strip of narrow plastic film with tapes of thin magnetizable coating. The tape are usually stored mm, cart- cartridges or cassettes, but for drives that are used for data storage, tape backups, tape is often wound on reels. So you might have seen that these magnetic tapes or the plastic tapes were wounded on the reels. So it can only provide sequential access. So we used to have this sort of tapes. You might have seen that the audio cassettes in which the magnetic tapes uh, were wounded on these wheels, and if I play it, it will start moving. And you might have seen these audio cassettes. So it can only provide sequential access storage, unlike a disk drive. So if I need to play a song in that audio cassette, you need to go through from the start, and then you can only go to the your preferred song. So it used to have sequential access. We cannot go to some location. We cannot go for a location. If I want to play the third song in the cassette, I cannot play it until I fast forward it to that location. So it can only provide sequential access, unlike disk drives. So they have low cost and long achievable stability. So their stability was high. We could have stored them for up to very long times, up to 10-15 years. So these were magnetic tapes. Then optical disc. Optical disc is a flat, usually circular disc that you may have used in your personal computers. You might have seen these optical discs that encodes binary data, bits, that is bits, in the form of bits, that is binary value of 0 due to lack of reflection, and length is for binary value 1 due to reflection when read, on a special material, often aluminium, on one of its flat surface. So you might have seen that the optical disc have the coating of aluminium on its surface, on which our data is stored. So the encoding pattern follows a continuous spiral path covering the entire disk surface and extending from the innermost track to the outermost track. So in this case also, that is optical disc, data is start entering from the center, and as we go away from the center, we could see that how much space is covered by the data, and this is our empty space. So the encoding pattern follows a continuous spiral path covering the entire disk surface and extending from innermost track to the outermost track. The data are stored on the disk with a laser or stamping machine and can be accessed when the data path is illuminated with a laser diode. So laser diode is used to fetch the data from the optical disk drive, so that spins the disk at a speed of 200 to 4000 rpm. Optical discs are usually between 7.6 to 30 centimeter in diameter. An optical disc is designed to support one of three recording types, that is read only. So we used to have CD-ROM, from which we can only fetch data, we cannot write into it. Then we had a recordable uh, optical disc, that is CDR, and then we had rewritable, re-recordable, that is CDRW optical discs. So you might have seen them as well. Optical discs are most commonly used for storing music, that is for use in CD player, and for storing videos, example in Blu-ray player. Blu-ray disc is a example of optical discs, and for data and programs in our PC. So next is input output device, that you all know. Input and output devices allow the computer system to interact with the outside world by moving data into and out of the system. So input device is used to bring data into the system. Some input devices examples are keyboard, mouse, microphone, barcode reader, graphic tables, digital pen, etc. So input devices are the one which we use to enter data into the computer system, and an output device is used to send data out of the system, that is the devices that are used to receive the data from the computer. So some output devices are monitor, printer, speaker, projector, etc. So input output devices are directly connected to an electronic module inside the system unit called a device control. So every input output device would require a device control for its operation, which is connected to the CPU. These are also called input output controller. That is, if we are using speakers, then for that we need a audio card, which is a input output controller for the speaker. Then we have input output controller. This question comes in 10 marks, that is explain input output devices with examples, and also explain input output controller. So this will come in your semester exam in 10 marks question. Okay, so the input output controller is a device that interfaces between an input or output device and the computer or hardware device. So it is basically a interface between the input output device and the CPU, that is the central processing unit. The input output controller on a computer is commonly located on the motherboard. So it is commonly located on the motherboard. However, an input output controller can also be an internal add-on that can either be used as a replacement or to allow for additional input output devices for the computer, or it can be added, it can be added as an add-on a place other than motherboard. So it can also be an internal add-on. Input output controller interface between the many devices and the internal system components, that is CPU, memory, and bus. A processor does not access external devices directly. So CPU, that is the central processing unit, does not access the external devices which can be input or output device directly. Instead, the processor uses a programming interface to pass request into the appropriate external signal. So this is basically a programming interface which controls the communication between the our computer or CPU and the input output device. So input output control connects the input output device to the system and communicate with the CPU and the RAM over the bus. So this can be the block diagram for that. A single input output controller may also control multiple devices. The CPU instructs input output controller to do the transfer. So if this is our bus, this is our RAM, this is CPU and cache memory. So input output controller will act as an interface between the input output devices and the computer's main memory or the central processing unit. So input output controller provides a method for transforming information between internal storage and input output devices. So peripherals, connected peripherals is nothing but these input output devices connected to a computer need special communication lines for interfacing them with the CPU. The purpose of communication link is to resolve the differences between that exist between the CPU and each peripheral. Let's say if we have connected more than 2 or 3 input output devices at the same time to the computer, then this input output controller will control their communication with the CPU, and it will resolve if there are any differences or more than 2 input output devices are trying to communicate at the same time. Then it will uh, do the communication on the priority basis. So the whatever of operation is required to be done on priority, that is which is having a higher priority, will be given time first, then the one which has the lower priority. So what is the need for input output controller? Peripherals are electromagnetic devices, that is our input output devices are electromagnetic devices, but CPU and memory are digital devices, or it reads information in binary form. Therefore the conversion of signal may be required. Data codes and formats in peripherals or devices differ from the word format in the CPU and memory. That is why the input output controller will also take care of these data codes and formats, and will make the input output devices compatible to our computer system. So data transfer rate of peripherals are slower than CPU, so synchronization will be required, and this synchronization is provided by the input output controllers. Operating modes of all peripherals are needed to be controlled so they do not disturb working of each other. So the as I have told you, the all input output devices have some priorities regarding their operations, so input output controller will also control that. So in this video we have seen optical devices, magnetic disks, flash memory. So these questions can come in 10 marks, that is like explain the magnetic disk and magnetic tapes, and also explain flash memory. So these all topics can come in 10 marks question, whereas these input output devices with input output controller can come in 10 marks questions. So 2 10 marks question can come out of this, and also if various short answer questions can be made. So thank you very much for watching.